Today we're going to talk about Sophie Chandauka. Now, this also involves Prince Harry, and it gets pretty interesting. Greg, wants to tell us about the videos we're going to watch.
Pretty simply, this is an interview from Sky News when Sophie Chandauka, who is the chair of the Sentebale charity that I think he founded, Prince Harry founded, has made accusations that he bullied her.
To be absolutely clear here, you're saying, Sophie, number one, that what you discovered was essentially donors were walking because of the prince's reputation.
Yes.
Let me put to you what some of the members of the board had said about essentially these allegations. Sky News spoke to Dr. Kelela Leratoli early on this week, and she said, I've been in all the meetings, conduct of the board has been one of respect for each other. All of this came as a shock to me. What exactly is the difference then?
Okay, I'll give
Dr. Leratoli doesn't recognise the picture Dr. Leratoli doesn't recognise the picture you're painting.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question in two parts, and Ian, it would be good to get your perspective as well. I'll be very direct with respect to Dr. Kelly. He had the worst attendance record, and even when he was in the meetings, he didn't actually contribute that much. So I'm not surprised that he didn't know much of what was going on in the organization.
To be fair, I mean, he's not here to answer for himself.
Yes.
But what he's saying is that when he was in the meetings, there was no conflict. Everything was pretty straightforward, and he can't see the allegations that you're making about poor governance in his experience. He doesn't recognise them.
I think, as a matter of fact, I mean, he wasn't in all the meetings, and if you have irregular attendance, then you're not going to see the trend over a long time.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, okay, so Trevor Phillips interviewing Shanduka here. Nothing out of the ordinary right at the start here. Donors were walking. Yes, she says. She kind of interrupts there, so she's ready with that answer, but it seems completely honest there. Prince's reputation and her lips pucker forward tightly. There seems to be some withheld negative association with the prince's reputation there. Another yes, head nodding throughout. Seems pretty good. Here's where it starts getting interesting for me. Dr. Kelela Leratoli is talked about here. He is the cousin of the co-founder, Prince Sezo of Leratoli, and she's already drinking water on that. So there seems to be some possible stress around this question coming up of the cousin of the co-founder. Also, we see disdain, corner of the mouth there comes up around the subject of him or what he's saying about her. There seems to be then some kind of threat check off to the side, or maybe she can see herself in a monitor, or maybe somebody she knows is off to the side, but she seems to check something to the side. Her breathing rate goes up. Her head starts to push forward. There's more head shakes, more negative, more aggression, and some vocal fry as well. So she seems very kind of positive around donors were walking, the prince's bad reputation, but a lot of stress around Dr. Kelela and what that person has said about her. And I would imagine the power that that person may have. So, interesting. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, great points. I'm going to go, for all these videos, I'm going to try to go deep on the behavior and the background of behavior. I know the body language is going to be covered and stuff, but her responses here are measured. There's no behavior here suggesting they're being deceptive in any way, in my opinion. In situations that are even really carefully planned out, there's almost always deliberate character attacks, even if they're subtle. As I understand it, Prince Harry's also just been named in the P. Diddy case, which if that comes out, we'll have some information for you. But let's get the behavior stuff out like right away here. In his formative years, he lost his mother, Princess Diana, at I think he was 12. There's some major trauma and there's some public grief that happened. He learned potentially that if I am ever a victim, I might receive love, attention, safety. This is a shortcut. So as a child, we're learning all these shortcuts. This is a shortcut to Maslow's foundational needs of love, belonging, security. And I think that maybe victimhood became a core identity. It's possible. He grew up in a very rigid, emotionless institution, extremely high scrutiny. I would assume zero agency, which can produce learned helplessness in an adult. And I think that leads to developing an external locus of control, which means that life happens to me. I'm the receiver of life, not the creator of life. And he left the monarchy, but he kept that same behavioral script. And since he didn't rebuild his identity, we're seeing the same emotional patterns just in a brand new role. So the role changes, but the emotional patterns have not. So the traits that emerge naturally in everybody that develop those things are hypersensitivity, overcorrection, defensiveness, and moral superiority. So keep in mind, I'm only going off the videos I've seen, and there are lots, but maybe there's some way that he's totally a completely different person outside of the hundreds of hours of video that are out there. So with these recent allegations, he's accused of bullying and emotional abuse. And that's what happens if there is power without a healthy framework. And if there is emotional overcompensation in any situation in the world, whether it's parenting or leadership, there's control and a leadership breakdown. And that's maybe what we're seeing in the next video. It's going to be even more interesting because she's about to go deep.
You know, we do this show so you can be more informed about behaviour and keep you and your family and friends safer. And that's why it's interesting to know that the Bank of America just revealed a data breach and they sat on that information for months. They're not the only bad actors. The average company takes almost 9 months to disclose a breach, which means your sensitive data could be floating around the dark web and you'd be the last to know. It's not just one bank's first problem. There are issues with Citigroup and JP Morgan Chase just last year. It's a pattern that can leave you in the dark for months and give cybercriminals a 9-month head start on your identity. And that's why I'm bringing today's sponsor, Aura, to your attention. Aura is like an early warning system. It scans the dark web for your phone number, email, social security number, anything that could be used against you. And when it finds anything, you get an alert fast. If someone tries to access your credit or bank accounts, Aura is on it. All the essential online safety features are in just one app. They also back up their work with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. Here's the deal. Go to aura.com/TBP and get a 14-day free trial. That's enough time for Aura to check if your personal information is in any trouble. And you'll know before companies are forced to send out one of those "we regret to inform you we had a data breach" letters. Then they give you out free credit monitoring after the damage is done. And that's just like locking the safe after the thieves have cleared it out. Data breaches are common. But if you've managed to avoid identity theft so far, why push your luck? Why not just lock it down right now? It can feel overwhelming, so let Aura just handle it. Head over to aura.com/TBP and grab your 2-week free trial and make sure it's right for you. Now, back to the show.
Scott, what do you got?
What's Harry in trouble for with Diddy? What'd they say? Do you know?
He has been
It's just
named
been named.
as a person who I think regularly attended parties.
Oh, wow, that's not good. Oof.
Good
All right,
video.
well, yeah, it'll be a good video. So I'm not seeing a whole lot of stress there at the beginning, but you can tell it's ramping up. So her head nods are smooth and they're slow. I think we're dealing with somebody who's pretty smart here. I think she's pretty sharp. So there's not a lot of internal dialogue going on when she's answering these questions, or beforehand she does look away and kind of check for a minute for some of them to make sure she's not missing anything, I think. But I don't think the questions or her answers are rehearsed. I don't think she sat down and said, I'm going to say this, this, and this. I think she's just already got that info and can just deliver it with no problem. She's not overselling it. She's not using her vernacular throughout this doesn't really change at all. She doesn't, and like you're talking about personal attacks, Chase, she doesn't get in there and say anything about anybody. If so-and-so did this or that, none of that, which makes her fairly potent. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And Ian, the guy that's with her, his behavior is pretty calm and confident as well. They seem really confident in what they're talking about, and they're not showing very much stress. So at this point, I'm tending to lean toward just right out of the gate. Anyway, this could change. I'm sort of believing them. I think what they're saying is pretty true. But toward the end, she starts using her illustrators, her hands more. So I think this is where her inside, she's getting a little bit ramped up, but she's controlling it. So that's good. And I think that's where we see the part that frustrates her there. Because right now, we're seeing more frustration than anything, I think. The anger we'll see come in a few minutes, but right now she's just really, really frustrated. And quite often people can confuse the two and think frustration is anger, but it's not anger yet anyway. So I think so far, right out of the gate, I think she's being honest, and I believe he is probably too. By the looks of them anyway. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the Royals thing, as you guys know, but one of the things I do like is when you get a story that's he said, she said, because somewhere in the middle is usually where the truth is, and I think we're going to find that here. Whereas I think you quoted Dr. Phil Chase once to say, no matter how thin you make a pancake, there's still two sides. That's the truth here. So let's talk about two things, baseline and Maslow, and I agree with you guys 100%. And this Maslow here, let's talk about Maslow that's artificial and Maslow that's real. One of the first things that matters after you get past physiological needs are belonging needs and where you fit in the organization. There's a natural version of that, with your friend group and that, and then there's an appointed version of that. Well, Harry, without much work, doesn't have to do a whole lot to have an appointed position somewhere. In this one, because he founded it, like you said, Mark, he's got natural position. Now, when she comes in and she starts to fulfill that need by belonging, that belonging and being the chair also fulfills esteem needs. So when that gets threatened, that's going to raise hackles, make a person perceive things through a different lens and everything else. So I want you to think about that as we're working through this, because self-image and where you fit in Maslow's hierarchy about your belonging in an organization and your esteem in that organization matter. Let's add also to that, there are formal roles within a board. If you've never sat on a board, you know that there's certain things that are acceptable, certain ones that aren't. And there are also entitlements and expectations. And people hear the word entitlement and automatically jump to some slang version of that today. I mean, what I am contractually entitled to, what I'm societally entitled to, whatever it is. And you can feel entitled, and that's a different thing. But what you're truly entitled to is one set of things, and then what you expect can be another. Now we'll go back to what Chase was talking about. Here's a guy who's been raised in privilege and in all these places, probably has some expectations in addition to his entitlements along the way. So he may come in and say, hey, let's just do this without looking and saying, does this follow the board's rules? We collectively have a small LLC. We have rules about how we would behave. That's what you do when you incorporate. So there's a whole lot of rigid kind of structure, and we're going to see some of her upset is around that. That's number one. Number two, baseline. I'm always about baseline. You guys know that. I say it every time. But we're not talking about the baseline she has when she's at home eating Cheetos on the couch. I say that over and over and over because we're starting from wherever she starts from here. And Mark, I agree with you. I see some escalation. See a little rapid breathing. And then I see a it's on face whenever she's ready for whoever this doctor is who said that she was not necessarily the best. You see her tilt her head a little bit. Her eyes open wide, her brow rise, and her mouth close immediately. She's got that look of like, yeah, okay, I can't believe you said that, but I'm ready for that. So I think here, and there's a little bit of a slight brow crunch at the same time. Her brow goes up and then it crunches. I think if you pay attention to her, we're going to see a sense of entitlement that's been, and I mean by that, the entitlement that you contractually are obligated to a chair versus what she feels she was given. So let's see where that goes. Does that anger her? Does that make her feel frustrated? There's a whole lot of things here we can see, and then we'll figure out, is it all the way to the left, all the way to the right, or somewhere in the middle? That's all I got.
To be absolutely clear here, you're saying, Sophie, number one, that what you discovered was essentially donors were walking
Yes.
because of the prince's reputation.
Yes.
Let me put to you what some of the members of the board had said about essentially these allegations. Sky News spoke to Dr. Kalele Leratoli earlier on this week, and she said, I've been in all the meetings, conduct of the board has been one of respect for each other. All of this came as a shock to me. What exactly is the difference then?
Okay. I'll give my...
Dr. Leratoli doesn't recognise the picture Dr. Leratoli doesn't recognise the picture you're painting.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question in two parts, and Ian, it would be good to get your perspective as well. I'll be very direct with respect to Dr. Kelly. He had the worst attendance record, and even when he was in the meetings, he didn't actually contribute that much. So I'm not surprised that he didn't know much of what was going on in the organization.
To be fair, I mean, he's not here to answer for himself.
Yes.
But what he's saying is that when he was in the meetings, there was no conflict. Everything was pretty straightforward, and he can't see the allegations that you're making about poor governance in his experience. He doesn't recognise them.
I think, as a matter of fact, I mean, he wasn't in all the meetings, and if you have irregular attendance, then you're not going to see the trend over a long time.
So here's the thing to remember. There were meetings definitely where Dr. Kelly was not present, and there was belligerence, and there was an insistence on, raising of topics that were not even on the agenda of the day. An example might be Prince Harry decides on a specific occasion that he wants to appoint an individual to the board with immediate effect without having talked to me. It's not on the agenda, and somehow everybody's just supposed to tolerate that.
The he being here, Prince Harry.
Yes, Prince.
So Prince Harry comes into the meeting and says, I want to appoint somebody as CEO.
As a board member, as a trustee with immediate effect. His proxy on the board says, yes, I second that motion. The third proxy on the board says, welcome to the board, Brian. And everybody's shocked and quiet. But this is what happens when the prince is in the room and no one has the courage to speak.
Well, speaking of not having the courage to speak, another trustee, Baroness Chalker of Wallasey, served as a trustee for 20 years, described you as, I'm quoting here, almost dictatorial.
Change is hard for some people. Let me just put it that way. I think what we had here was a board that had overstayed by even Charity Commission guidance. Most of the members of the board, when I came back in July of 2023, had been on the board when I left. This is not how a properly run organization should work. You're not supposed to be on a board for past 9 years. Most of these individuals were there for 5, 10, 15, now 19 years. And so what you have is entrenchment. And there's a reason why you have term limits, because people begin to mark their own homework, and turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And so here I come talking about transformation and innovation and fresh ideas. What do you think the response might be?
All right, Chase, what do you got?
If I'm looking at any royal family issue or any other issue that involves these elites, there's one thing these people learn extremely quickly to weaponize and distort. So in my mind, it's one of the most reliable things you can look at when you're observing drama like playing out on the news, which is not healthy, and I don't recommend it. But it's metaphor, parable, and allegory. Those three things. So really quickly, let's talk about why metaphors work. Metaphors bypass logic and go straight to this emotional part of our brain, the more mammalian part of our brain, because they're visual. They're sticky and memorable, if we can get them across, and they frame our perception without needing any kind of proof. Without needing proof. So they make these little frames in our head that seriously influence how we see someone or something, like putting a filter over a lens. And just on the surface of this, it might sound deep or thoughtful, but it's just a sneaky way to get people emotionally bought in without offering any real evidence at all. So the way that they kind of become weapons, like instead of saying what the person did, they'll say what the person is like. So like they might say a phrase like, he's like a cancer in the company, slowly eating away at everything good. No need to back that up. Just drop a metaphor like that, and everybody starts looking at the guy sideways. And so it's like a psychological graffiti. You paint over somebody's character in one sentence. And the second way that deceptive people use this is they make themselves the hero. You hear these CEOs and stuff out there say like, oh, we're just trying to be the lighthouse in the storm here. All we're doing is trying to protect the sheep from the wolf. They're not just these little poetic things. These are calculated. It's about creating a moral contrast. We are the light, they are the darkness. No nuance whatsoever, just clean-cut manipulation. And the metaphor replaces evidence in so many cases, even in the courtroom, when courtroom stuff plays out. Once they set the frame like snake, virus, wolf, whatever, everything that person does afterward gets filtered through that lens. And all of a sudden, all these neutral behaviors look a little bit shady. These tiny little flaws seem a little bit dangerous. So here's how to know when it's absolute bullshit. Number one, they use metaphors about people instead of topics. People telling the truth use metaphors to explain a bunch of complex stuff like politics is a chessboard. Character assassins use them to label somebody like he's a ticking time bomb. And it gets emotional very quickly. The goal is to stir the pot. So it makes people feel something really strong that they didn't realize there's no substance behind it. And I think the last point would be that there's no follow-up and there's no proof. They drop this big ass metaphor and then they nod like you're supposed to see it, but there's no real breakdown of facts. So truth telling uses metaphor to explain and to clarify systems, groups, and patterns, not to target an individual. They aim to increase understanding. They're backed by logic and data, not just some emotional appeal. The metaphor that you hear in this clip is truth telling because it's systems, processes, and facts. And she can back it up the moment that she's asked about it, probably with facts. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I see congruent messaging. I see her delivering messaging with her body that her mouth is saying, and I'll point those out here in just a second. Let me give you a good example of what happens when people feel, and the reason I say it's always somewhere in the middle, when people feel a certain way. First Gulf War, I was in Kuwait. We were police and everything else at the end. This guy came in and told me that his daughter, who was a nurse, had been abused by this doctor. Well, allegations like that are big. And especially in the culture we're trying to reestablish. After digging in and interviewing these people, more than one person, we found his abuse was that he fired her because she refused to treat Iraqi prisoners. Now, imagine if you had not been able to dig through those feelings and all that stuff. To your point, Chase, abuse is a strong word. Well, we automatically assume the worst, and they go after that kind of thing. And this guy would have had somebody, and there's a bunch of tribalism involved, all kinds of stuff get involved when you are dealing with people. But when a person feels wronged, they're going to find the best way to make you feel the same wronging they felt. And in the case of it making it about the person, he's a monster, he's a this, he's a that. She doesn't say that. She goes into other ways of explaining, and I agree with you there. She navigates very carefully, and we always talk about eye movement on here, and I say you got to be really careful assigning anything to anything. And here's a great example of why. When she's looking down into her right, I don't think it's emotional accessing. I think you're asking her a question, and she is thinking through the right words to explain what's going on in her head. I don't think it's emotional. I think there could be some emotion in that, but she's very concise with what she's saying. She does that accessing. Her body is moving to illustrate to your point. Her body's moving to illustrate her points. That's congruent messaging. When I hit on my points, and Mark, I think in your case, where you talk about them hitting every syllable, it's awkward. This isn't that. Again, we're not talking about whether she's telling the truth as a flat fact, but what she perceives from her side. So I can only go there. She's got good 50-50 eye contact. And I say that about most Western cultures. We do 50-50. We'll talk, look at you, turn and think, look at you. Other cultures may be very different. And if you go to Asia, you'll see a lot less eye contact. If you go to the Middle East, you see a lot more eye contact. So when we say 50-50, remember it's culture and it's baseline. The only way to find out a real true eye movement pattern for a person is to ask questions. And they have to be very concise questions around accessing verbal memory, visual memory, auditory memory, visual memory, and those kinds of things. We're not seeing that, so we really can't build a pattern. But her hands come up to illustrate when she's talking about the model of the board and how things should operate. And then she is punctuating when she's indignant and closes her lips and throws her chin up when she's talking about that welcome to the board moment. If you want to know what's going on, this is where she feels like he violated an entitlement, and I don't mean that in the most modern slang version. I mean a true entitlement of the board by bypassing her authority, by bypassing the process and appointing de facto someone. And then there's an amused smile too when she gets to the point where she's challenged about being dictatorial. Look, I ran change management for big companies for a long time in the billions of dollars. You're always going to be perceived as something other than friendly when you're making change. It just is the way it is. So I can hear in her voice that doesn't mean that he didn't perceive her as sloppy or something else, and she perceived him as. So what I want you to see is her body language can punctuate truth in what she believes and thinks, and the truth can be something other than that. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about that smile. There is a detectable smile when Phillips calls out that Baroness Chalker of Wallasey suggested that she was dictatorial. Now, why might that be? Well, Baroness Chalker is a grand dame of politics, somebody who has been longer in politics than most others, held a lot of different offices, longer than anybody else, and would be seen as conservative establishment. And she was the conservative for African development. Now, African development isn't necessarily taking money into Africa. It's going into Africa and taking resources from Africa in exchange for their development. So she would be seen, Chalker would be seen as the establishment of the usual way of dealing with Africa, I would say. So I think the smile is one of, that is a formidable adversary to be chalked up as dictatorial against. That's a worthy opponent to have that said of you from. So I think she quite likes that. And I think that's what the smile would be about. Now, after that, to your point, Chase, about metaphors, we get lots of images and metaphors. In my view, look, you've got metaphors and similes. Similes is where you say something is like something. A metaphor is where you call something that it is not. And just as you say, Chase, plays a lovely trick on the brain, because the brain forgets you were really talking about a simile. It thinks, it starts to see those images. So Shanduka here says that these former board members, Chalker of Wallasey being one of them, have been marking their own homework. So she makes them children. So she reduces them to children who are allowed to mark their own homework. She demotes them. And then she says, and the turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So now she makes them animals. Next demotion. In metaphor, what you're generally trying to do is either raise people towards the heavens or take them to the earth, and then take them below the earth where demons and the hot magma of the earth exists. So you've got escalating to the heavens or down into the depths of the caves. She makes them children, makes them turkeys that won't vote for their own destruction. Beautiful images there of establishment and change. And so a lovely hit she does there on Baroness Chalker of Wallasey and all, I would think, her type that she's thinking of the old establishment, of the old way of going into Africa for the British and how we deal with Africa. She's trying to change that at the moment. That's what she's in her mind and probably in actual fact up against. But beautiful communication there, and that lovely smile there of I think enjoying this idea that somebody at the level of Chalker has called her a dictator. There's some beauty in there somewhere. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. I think she knows exactly what she wants to say. Again, I don't think she sat around and thought about her answers and thought, I'll say this if they say that and all that. I think she's secure and confident with the information she has to be able to deliver it without the anger that by this time, normally I think somebody would be pretty upset. Normal people would be pretty upset. Again, I think she's so well spoken. She doesn't need to make things sound better than they are, bigger or more important than they are. So again, toward the end here, she starts using her illustrators. They're even bigger this time. So I think she's really trying to get that point across, the point she's making, trying to make sure that those are understood well. And it's not she's trying to look like she's getting all worked up. This is one of those people that when you argue with them, you got to be careful because they could just be livid and you'd never know it. So they're getting ready to pull out their best stuff, man, and to get you, and you wouldn't see it coming. And that's how they, it's like getting hit in the side of the head with a baseball bat from behind. That's when they start talking to you with their replies. That's what you get. So I think this is the part that frustrates her here at the end. And she understands the rules for a board and all that. I think she understands how all that works. I think she's a stickler for the details, So I think somebody fighting her on that, which I think Harry doesn't understand all those things. He probably has a pretty good understanding of them. But I think she's a detailed, analytical person. So fussing with somebody over their job or whatever if it is they've been assigned to do, that personality type, that's tough, especially if, and it sounds like to me, she's done everything she's supposed to do, it's kept everything in line. That's a tough fight there. So I so far, I'm not seeing her be deceptive or anything. I just see her ramping up. She's getting really frustrated. We're seeing a little bit of anger come in there to help move that along. All right. We good?
So here's the thing to remember. There were meetings definitely where Dr. Kelly was not present, and there was belligerence, and there was an insistence on, raising of topics that were not even on the agenda of the day. An example might be Prince Harry decides on a specific occasion that he wants to appoint an individual to the board with immediate effect without having talked to me. It's not on the agenda, and somehow everybody's just supposed to tolerate that.
The he being here, Prince Harry.
Yes, Prince
So
Harry.
Prince Harry comes into the meeting and says, I want to appoint somebody as CEO.
And as a board member, as a trustee with immediate effect. His proxy on the board says, yes, I second that motion. The third proxy on the board says, welcome to the board, Brian. And everybody's shocked and quiet. But this is what happens when the prince is in the room and no one has the courage to speak.
Well, speaking of not having the courage to speak, another trustee, Baroness Chalker of Wallasey, served as a trustee for 20 years, described you as, I'm quoting here, almost dictatorial.
Change is hard for some people. Let me just put it that way. I think what we had here was a board that had overstayed by even Charity Commission guidance. Most of the members of the board, when I came back in July of 2023, had been on the board when I left. This is not how a properly run organization should work. You're not supposed to be on a board for past 9 years. Most of these individuals were there for 5, 10, 15, now 19 years. And so what you have is entrenchment. And there's a reason why you have term limits, because people begin to mark their own homework, and turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And so here I come talking about transformation and innovation and fresh ideas, what do you think the response might be?
Sophie, let's talk about where things, as you saw it, started to go wrong. One of the incidents was the fundraising, the Polo tournament, which is one of the ways in which Sentebale raised a lot of money. What happened?
We were so fortunate to have the opportunity to do a Polo challenge in Miami last year in April. We had a very generous family that was happy for us to use their polo grounds at a material discount. And then about a month before the event was about to take place, Prince Harry called the team and said, I'm doing a Netflix show, and I would love to bring a camera crew so that I can include some footage in this show. And so the team called me and tell me, oh, Prince Harry's made this request, so we're doing the things. I said, you can't be doing the things without seeking consent from the property owners, the sponsors, all the guests. Nobody signed up into being on a Netflix show. And so we have this discussion about the need to talk to everybody. We come up with draft agreements. And of course, the venue owner says, this is now a commercial undertaking. So here are my terms. We couldn't afford it. So now we lost the venue. So we went to another venue. And we were lucky enough that through Prince Harry's connections, actually, and a friend of his, there was another family that was prepared to host. The show went on, but there was a lot of disruption, right? A lot of people were unhappy because we'd worked on this for months. At the actual, on the actual day, we had Prince Harry, which is always wonderful. The Duchess decided to attend, but she told us she wasn't attending. And she brought a friend, a very famous friend. So you can imagine all of the activity that goes with these additional amazing people. We're excited about it. We would have been really excited had we known ahead of time, but we didn't. And so the choreography went badly on stage because we had too many people on stage. The international press captured this, and there was a lot of talk about the Duchess and the choreography on stage and whether she should have been there and her treatment of me. Prince Harry asked me to issue some sort of a statement in support of the Duchess, and I said I wouldn't. Not because I didn't care about the Duchess, but because I knew what would happen if I did so, number one. And number two, because we cannot be an extension of the Sussex.
What would have
PR
happened
machine.
if you had simply just said, there's nothing wrong with what's happened, what the Duchess did?
Well, the Duchess has told Dr. Sophie Chandauka to make a press release about her, and then she'll get even worse trolling. That's what would have happened.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one because there's one of my favorite things we said of this whole thing is a "Are you stupid?" face is what I call it. Look at that when she's looking like, "Are you stupid?" There's all that coming back up. She's got good hand use. Sorry, I've got written notes today. She's got good hand use that are illustrating what she's thinking and what she's talking about, so it makes her look believable. Her face with that kind of twisted little look of, are you stupid? Not to him, but to the person who's challenging her. And I said, it's almost an eek face. Their teeth are exposed when she's talking about this, about the last, or about the, about Meghan attending this thing. Look at her face. Her teeth are exposed. She's wide-eyed, closed-mouthed right after with disbelief. That forehead's slick. It is just disbelief is all it is when she showed up at the last minute. Then she's got massive illustrators when she's bringing it up. And then I think the perception of, forget everything else we watch in this entire video, this entire series of clips, when she says the treatment of me, even the guy interviewing her perceives that and goes, oh, he clicks right on it. That's the whole crux of this matter, is the treatment of her in this entire series of videos, and you could sum it up right there. Now, again, we can't tell what happened for sure and how a person perceived their treatment. Treatment is a hard one. When you're given some kind of an order and you don't do it, or you're pushing somebody out of the way, or you leak information we'll hear about, that's pretty clear and easy to categorize. It's much more difficult when you feel like you've been disrespected or somebody's taken over authority or that kind of thing from your position. Scott, what do you got?
All right. I think, again, this backs up my point earlier about her being a stickler for details and being analytical. And this personality type, this is the kind of person you want working for you. And you want them to like you, too, because she'll miss nothing. I think that's what she's always built her. She and I'd get along great. I think. I think she'd like me because I would never fuss with her because I see what she is. Because I think she'd go in for the kill really quick, no matter what you're fussing about. I think she could find. It's like comedians when they first meet you, they find out your weaknesses, and then if you do anything weird, then they attack you right at the jugular, man. So I think that she'd be that type of person. So I think she plays by the book, and she wants to keep everything above board and legal and everything looking squeaky clean as it should be. And I think when Harry starts interjecting these other things in there, I think it starts going a little sideways for her. For her, she sees that's not the way you do that, and that bothers her. So she's not swayed by fame or the notoriety of these people, because when she's talking about the really famous person, she doesn't say who it is. She doesn't name drop. So she just throws that aside. She doesn't care about that. So I think she's really good for this job. I'm on her side right now anyway. So I believe her. All right, is that everybody?
No.
Oh, Chase,
Mark.
what do you got?
Chase.
Or Chase?
Mark or Chase.
It really sounds like she's trying to paint a picture where you're not just seeing his behavior in one instance, but she's giving you an example that seems probably in her mind that is a perfect way to sum up how lots of other things went as well. So based on her account, it was just kind of a feelings first, structure later, or if ever. She says, if I am doing a Netflix show, let's bring cameras to the event. This is pure emotional decision making, no heads up, no logistics, no consent from the people that are running this thing. And it shows that he's operating from impulse instead of planning. This feels right to me, without thinking who's holding the bag in any way. And the next one is Harry made the request, so we're doing it. So the team just obeyed. No debate, no pause. And it might show that people around him default to yes, which is a red flag. There's no friction, no feedback loop of any kind. And that's not leadership. It's maybe what I would call a royalty hangover. And the next one here is interesting. She says, we lost the venue, then Harry helped us find another. So she's saying, like, he started this fire and then he got credit for bringing the hose to the fire. Essentially, is what's going on. And it shows this is a hero after the damage pattern is kind of classic. It keeps the spotlight and helps somebody to dodge responsibility. And finally, he said, Megan said she wasn't coming. Then she showed up with a famous friend. A complete curveball for any high stakes event, especially when it's on TV. And it shows no understanding of how this personally affects the people that are running logistics. It's kind of a personal decision dropped into someone else's machine. And then I think she makes one more statement. She says, Harry asked me to make a public statement supporting Megan. That's not support. That is coercion, subtle coercion. She says no, and she's not the problem. And that is showing us from a behavioral perspective, he's trying to control the story through other people's credibility. That is an age-old manipulation pattern, very plain and simple. And she finally says, if I did that, I'd be the one getting trolled. So he wanted her to take a hit publicly so he and Megan didn't have to. Allegedly, all of this is allegedly, which would show to me he's outsourcing fallout. That is just not leadership in any possible way. And finally, there's a quote about, we can't be an extension of the Sussexes. I think maybe that's the right way to say it. So she's drawing the line that Harry should have drawn. As I understand this, the charity itself exists to help people, not to serve as some kind of sidekick marketing campaign to the Sussex brand, my understanding. And if that's true, it shows total boundary loss between personal image and professional mission, which this should have been, I guess. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, just so everybody on the show and everybody listening knows, for any Englishman or Englishwoman, if you mess up with the polo pitch, you always have another one in your back pocket. There's always another one. You know, especially when you're in Miami. You know, they're just 10 a penny. No, you're absolutely right, Chase. It's like it's a great analogy if he starts the fire and then is the hero putting it out. I mean, he's lucky that he could. I don't think, you know, they are 10 a penny polo pitches. So you mess one up, you're lucky to get another one. Anyway, I think she goes into, long-term memory there, her eyes cast down as she kind of relives the images, I think, of this event. So I'm going to say, yeah, it seems like this is most likely what happened, what transpired in her mind. Nobody signed up for being on a Netflix show, and we get disdain and contempt on that. So it's yeah, as you were saying, Scott, you know, there's a line drawn. I don't think it's that she can't deal with that, but like, if it's going to be a Netflix show, let's deal with that. Let's know who's going to show up, because just as you say, Chase, some surprise guest shows up. Well, it's one of the most famous African Americans in the world, female. It's Serena Williams shows up. Like, you'd want to capitalize on that. You want to go, oh, you know what? If we can get Serena here, like, what could we do with that for all of the people who benefit from our charity, which is in Lesotho and is a very, minor for most people. Most people have never heard of it, and there's people suffering there, and that's the job of the charity. What a great opportunity, but you'd want to know about that beforehand rather than it being laid down as a surprise, if possible. So we see and hear the agitation rise in her voice. She becomes more agitating, and she checks Trevor Phillips there, a lot of eyebrow raises to go, are you getting the agitation of this situation? Are you getting, how people have said, just how frustrating this can be when somebody's working on this set of rules, and here's the way we need to do it to get a function together in Miami and raise money for these people in Africa. I think, the Duchess decided to attend. There is that show of the teeth there. There is something of anger and disgust there, a surprise as well. And then the reality is, because I went and looked at the other film footage of this, what happens is the Duchess then puts herself between Harry and Shanduka at the moment of the photograph when the trophy is handed over. So she inserts herself, next to her husband, fair play. Fair play. But then there's this moment when Shanduka wants to get the photograph next to Harry with the trophy, and we could speculate as to whether that's the kind of money shot for the charity, or she wants that for herself. She wants to be, or both could be true. I don't know which one it is. But clearly it is a mess up, and it's not that there isn't enough room on stage, but it hasn't been choreographed for, like, we'll do the photograph with you and Harry, then it'll be my photograph, then we'll have one all together. That it's a mess up, it's a disaster. And of course, then the papers, the media in the UK for sure hit on that, because listen, there is no bigger, the reality here is, and we'll come to this later, is if you have Prince Harry and Meghan around your charity, you've got news stories which are bigger than the Trump machine can do right now. That's as big as you're getting no bigger publicity in the world than by having them attached in a positive or negative way. You can get news coverage. Now, as she says, whether your donors start exiting because it's negative news coverage, that might be a different thing, but you are getting coverage. And then we see something that I've not really seen before. So I'm interested in this one. I got my theory on it. The Duchess has told Dr. Sophie Chandauka to make a press release. She's saying, what am I going to do? I'm going to say to them, look, I've been told by the Duchess to make a press release, and her one shoulder goes up really hard. And And it's not, usually we'd associate the single shoulder shrug with, a possibility around indecision around that. There may be something not quite accurate about that. It's so sharp and so hard. I think it's like, Chase, sometimes we see with one of those joust. I think it's a joust gesture, but it's gone into the shoulder. Now, I could be wrong because I've never seen this before, but it's pretty aggressive. And so again, I think we get a sense of, and potentially quite rightly so, I'm not going to be told by the old guard aristocracy, which people may not see Meghan as part of, but, absolutely she now is. I'm not going to be told by them what to say about them. I'm running a charity which is for people in Africa, and that's my job, and I won't be told what press releases. So, listen, I think we see this frustration and potential anger and disgust at her position starting to be usurped by this relationship with Meghan, and certainly Harry at the start, and now Meghan coming into it, and a sense of like, this is, Serena Williams is coming in, and now this is chaos because we haven't capitalized on any of this. That's all I got on that one. Let's see another.
Hey, I got two things real quick. In 1513, there's this cat named Machiavelli. He's an Italian dude. And he wrote this book called The Prince. And that's what he's talking about, Chase, is what you're talking about, when he uses credibility to manipulate people and use them and use it against them. That's I guess, Harry using stuff straight out of that, for what it sounds like.
He's doing it straight from there, though.
Yeah. Being a prince
coming up
as well.
I think he's genetically doing. To Chase's point, I think this is organism. He's gotten away with it so long.
And then part two, first time caller, long time listener. Mark, the other day you and I were talking about the meaning of Brit and if it was good or bad. I didn't know it wasn't as respectful, so I didn't know. So when you call someone an Englishman, what's the difference in calling them a Britishman or British man or British
because
person?
Britain is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
Right.
Okay, and Northern Ireland. And so those are the British Isles. And then you've got obviously the Republic of Southern Ireland, which is not part of, it's in those islands, but it's Southern Ireland. It's a republic all of its own due to the fine revolution that they had. So it is you can often get it wrong by calling somebody British or a Brit, especially when it comes to Irish.
Okay.
You could get that substantially wrong. And some of us like to then delineate down and go, I'm Scottish, or I'm Welsh, or I'm English, or I'm from Northern Ireland, and delineate down to those original kingdoms.
So you'd be an Englishman.
I was born in England. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
English. Yeah, I would never call myself Scottish or Welsh. That would be, frankly, patently ridiculous.
Then what is a git?
What's a git? Like an idiot, but a pedant, a pedantic kind of idiot.
Oh, okay.
A real git.
Okay.
Yeah, you got an old git as well, which is just an old version of it. You got a git, and then you got an old git, which is like, been doing it forever. Got really good at it.
GIT.
Git, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where it derivates from.
I called this Irish guy that once. I thought he was going to kill me. Called him Git. I was driving by. I said, "Hey, Git," like that. I didn't know it was bad. That bad,
Yeah. Yeah, you got to be careful. It's in the intonation. Like anything.
Okay.
You can call anybody the most extreme expletive, but how you do it could be either you're looking for a fight or you love them.
Oh yeah, I
You
totally get
know
that.
how to do it.
Okay. There you go. It was subtle, Chase, but I got it. Greg, you came in hard, man. Hats off.
Sophie, let's talk about where things, as you saw it, started to go wrong. One of the incidents was the fundraising, the Polo tournament, which is one of the ways in which Sentebale raised a lot of money. What happened?
We were so fortunate to have the opportunity to do a Polo challenge in Miami last year in April. We had a very generous family that was happy for us to use their Polo grounds at a material discount. And then about a month before the event was about to take place, Prince Harry called the team and said, I'm doing a Netflix show, and I would love to bring a camera crew so that I can include some footage in this show. And so the team called me and tell me, oh, Prince Harry's made this request, so we're doing the things. I said, you can't be doing the things without seeking consent from the property owners, the sponsors, all the guests. Nobody signed up into being on a Netflix show. And so we have this discussion about the need to talk to everybody. We come up with draft agreements. And of course, the venue owner says, this is now a commercial undertaking. So here are my terms. We couldn't afford it. So now we lost the venue. So we went to another venue, and we were lucky enough that through Prince Harry's connections, actually, and a friend of his, there was another family that was prepared to host. The show went on, but there was a lot of disruption, right? A lot of people were unhappy because we'd worked on this for months. At the actual, on the actual day, we had Prince Harry, which is always wonderful. The Duchess decided to attend, but she told us she wasn't attending. And she brought a friend, a very famous friend. So you can imagine all of the activity that goes with these additional amazing people. We're excited about it. We would have been really excited had we known ahead of time, but we didn't. And so the choreography went badly on stage because we had too many people on stage. The international press captured this, and there was a lot of talk about the Duchess and the choreography on stage and whether she should have been there and her treatment of me. Prince Harry asked me to issue some sort of a statement in support of the Duchess, and I said I wouldn't. Not because I didn't care about the Duchess, but because I knew what would happen if I did so, number one. And number two, because we cannot be an extension of the Sussex.
What would have
PR
happened
machine.
if you had simply just said, there's nothing wrong with what's happened, what the Duchess did?
Well, the Duchess has told Dr. Sophie Chandauka to make a press release about her, and then she'll get even worse trolling. That's what would have happened. What would have happened.
You said that Prince Harry wanted to, I'm quoting here, force the failure of the charity. Why on earth would he want a charity he founded in memory of his mother to fail? I mean, that's... He would have some justification for feeling hurt at allegation.
To be honest, it's a last resort. Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organization, and this went on for months. It went on for months through bullying, harassment. I have documentation. There were board meetings where members of the executive team and external strategic advisors were sending me messages saying, should I interrupt? Should I stop this? Oh my gosh, this is so bad. In fact, our strategic advisor for fundraising then sent me a message saying she wouldn't want to ever attend any more board meetings or bring her colleagues because of the treatment. When that failed, Prince Harry started to brief, and his team, sponsors that I'd been speaking to against me and the charity, because that is a sure way of getting me out if it's seen as though I'm not being successful in my fundraising efforts.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. Okay. Look, now it's kicking off as far as I can see. I think we have real anger happening here. The blink rate is up. Certainly there's stress there. The eyes are widening in Shanduka. Blink rate up, eyes widening. We've got more kind of, browbeating movement of the head forcibly to get her point across. Still some looks for approval, though, to Trevor Phillips. So though the anger is up, it is being mediated. I'm not saying she's absolutely losing it. She's very good at mediating herself. But I think, we'll see. But certainly from my point of view, I can see quite a lot of underlying anger in this that she's holding together. We even start to get a little bit of finger wagging there. That might, it's quite, you can just kind of see it in frame. It's quite pronounced. That might be also have some cultural elements to it. Certainly, some of the Nigerians that I work with will often get into the finger wagging. She's from Zimbabwe, and obviously Zimbabwe is not Nigeria, and they're not even close to each other. But I wonder about that, because it's quite pronounced, the finger wagging there, and that's lovely to see. So I love it when the Nigerians get into that. Really what she's saying is, look, the real message here is he wanted me out and not to look successful, to be a failure. And that's the underlying story of that. Prince Harry is trying to push her out, and at the same time wants to leave her looking a failure. And I think that's the real issue for her, is that idea of failure. That might be my own projection onto that, but here, this is the crux of the story: being pushed out and being made to look a failure. This is what it's all about, as far as I can see. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, Mark, I 100% agree with you. This is exactly what I started with, Maslow. Where you belong, how much esteem you get. Now imagine with one fell swoop, you lose esteem and belonging to an organization. Forget the money. I don't know how much money she makes or her career, but if you destroy her ability to make a living in the process too, that certainly feels like bullying to me, if you're able to do that. The other thing I would mention is we can't pretend that we understand what it's like to deal with a prince. We can't. Mark, you may have had some exposure at some point in your life, but regardless of what we call this guy today, where they call him Harry, where we call him a goofball, whatever we think, he still has a place in people's head because of who he is. There are probably not many of us who can just go by our first name and people know who we are. You know, Elvis Presley is gone. There's a Prince. This Harry. Yeah, but if whatever name you've got, whatever name you were singular enough that you can get name recognition, you can have a whole hell of a lot of informal authority to make things happen. And what we're talking about, a lot of what we're talking about here is informal authority, not formal. Like him saying, okay, I'm going to bring her. And like you said, it might have been a genuinely an okay idea that he was going to bring a camera, never thought of it. But then you're back to something Chase said, where he's assuming he has a right to do whatever it is he wants to do. Now we're back to the organism has gotten away with this for so long, and here we are. But I think this clearly has landed on her enough that she feels, for sure, she's certainly feeling anger here. You can see it. She's calm and no respiration. Scott, that goes back to what you said earlier. She's probably a hell of a good arguer because she doesn't lose control of her mind. She keeps it there very clearly. When she changes over to her message, watch her lower teeth expose and she starts browbeating, to your point, Mark. That's anger. That's anger all day. You can't miss it. Now she's riveted eye contact with the guy. Now, I'll also say this. We say all the time, the best indicator of deception is often that a person is staring at you and paying attention. It's also a thing people do when they're trying to convince you, persuade you, or tell you something that you may or may not know or may or may not get or understand. So they make really good eye contact because they're trying to figure it out. And we always tell you there's no such thing as a single indicator of deception. That's true here. What she's describing here is betrayal. That's what I see. And betrayal makes people more angry than anything else. It's one of the reasons it's the ninth plane of hell, if you want to look at history. But she's got great riveted eye contact. And then the only thing I wish she would have said is, how did he bully you? And she'll get to that. But if she had said, how did he bully, and if he'd gotten a very specific answer to that question, I think we would have been a lot more comfortable right here. Let's just hang in there and see what we get next. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah. It's trying to, I think he's trying to burn it down to get her out. So she says, Harry wanted to eject me through bullying and harassment. This is the big one for me. Yeah. When he couldn't get what he wanted directly, it sounds like he tried to tank the entire charity to make her look like the problem. And I think that really shows a total scorched earth move. Like, if I can't control it, I will crush it and start over with people that I can control. That's potentially what we're seeing, if this is all true, obviously. And she's saying this went on for months. People texting me during meetings like, should I stop this? This wasn't some explosive moment. That's not what we're dealing with here. It was slow and intentional grind from what she's describing to wear her down. And this is covert dominance. No yelling, no constant pressure, just this constant covert pressure until somebody breaks or quits. And this strategic advisor, I don't know who it is, said she never wanted to come back to a board meeting. And that kind of behavior spreads very quick in an organization. If the professionals, the leaders are saying, I'm out, it's not just awkward, it's toxic and it's contagious in organizations like this. And that shows his emotional mess is now killing morale around the whole place. And it's maybe pushing good people away. And finally here, and I'm breaking down these statements. Maybe it's a new thing I'm trying here. Let me know in the comments whether you like it or not. I won't read it, but you can let me know. So, and with all this, there's no damage control. That's deliberate reputation sabotage. It's talking behind her back to kill credibility. And this shows classic character assassination. If he can't get her out directly, he was going to poison the well until others start turning on her. And one more thing she says I missed here. It looks like I'm failing at fundraising. That gives him an out. And he's not trying to fix anything. He just wanted to make her look like she was failing, even if she wasn't. And this is weaponized accountability. It is twisting all of this crap and numbers to build a case against somebody. And I think the crazy part here, he probably sees himself as the victim. And that's the danger of victim identity. It gives people just enough justification to act like a villain and still feel righteous. And I think in the next video, I'm going to blow your mind with what this all actually means. And it's not about aliens. I wish it was, but it's not about aliens. Scott, what do you got?
All right. And speaking of comments, there was don't worry, I'm not in there fussing with people in the comments. Not on this channel, but on mine I am. But there was this one comment that said, Scott, you stop crossing your arms like this. She said, it makes your head look so little and your hands look giant. This looks wrong. It looks abnormal. So I know she's watching. So I didn't say anything as far as to her at all. So, all right. I think so far, this is the most anger we've seen from her. And again, it's mostly frustration. And when she says she has documentation, I'm sure she does. I'm sure she has all of it because that's her personality type, just keep everything. This is just the toughest person to try to get to what he's trying to do. It's tough. That's why we're seeing such a big dust up, because this personality type doesn't put up with that. And like you were talking about, Mark, she's afraid of her reputation and everything she's built up, because she's been spot on. I mean, I'm under the impression she's been spot on with everything, and this cat's trying to mess it up. She's not going to have any of that, but she's going to still use that same analytical. She's going to use tactics analytically against him, and I think it's working brilliantly.
Can you imagine that deposition?
Oof.
Like, in a deposition, someone trying to cross-examine her would be so great.
You'd be there for days, man.
Yeah.
She'd tell you all of it, Oof. So this is, in my opinion, this is somebody you want as a team member. You want them on your side. You don't want them against you, or you want to be friends with them because you can go to them and say, hey, look, here's what's happening. What would you do in this situation? This is the kind of person you want as a team member, because you can utilize them to help you with your stuff too, with other things that are going on. I really like her. I know there's a lot of people who probably don't believe her or whatever, but I believe her, and I think I think she'd be a potent ally. You don't want her as an enemy, that's for dang sure. Mark, what do you got?
I've been, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that everybody in?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll give you that one.
What would have happened?
You said that Prince Harry wanted to, I'm quoting here, force the failure of the charity. Why on earth would he want a charity he founded in memory of his mother to fail? I mean, he would have some justification for feeling hurt at allegation.
To be honest, it's a last resort. Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organization. And this went on for months. It went on for months through bullying, harassment. I have documentation. There were board meetings where members of the executive team and external strategic advisors were sending me messages saying, should I interrupt? Should I stop this? Oh my gosh, this is so bad. In fact, our strategic advisor for fundraising then sent me a message saying she wouldn't want to ever attend any more board meetings or bring her colleagues because of the treatment. When that failed, Prince Harry started to brief, and his team, sponsors that I'd been speaking to against me and the charity, because that is a sure way of getting me out if it's seen as though I'm not being successful in my fundraising efforts. Yes.
What you're essentially saying is that the Duke of Sussex is guilty of harassment and bullying and improper conduct in the governance of a charity.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I'm going to give you a really good example. The only reason I'm here, Trevor, is because at some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me, or my country directors, or my executive director. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? That is an example of harassment and bullying at scale. And so if the world didn't want to believe that there's such a thing as bullying, this unleashing of the Sussex machine on me and the 540 employees at Sentebale who received this and have had to defend it.
By the way, when you say the Sussex machine, what are you talking about?
The PR machine that supports Prince Harry's efforts. The only way we discovered of his decision was through the Sussex machine activating newspapers.
You were not told that he and the Princess planned to resign?
We were informed that they have the intention to withdraw if I went to the High Court and succeeded.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
Her disgust and contempt for this behavior is very obvious on her face here. She's not making a show of it. She's even trying to conceal some of it. So Prince Harry kind of assembled this little post-royal identity on being the outsider, the one who was silenced and manipulated, thrown under the bus by everybody in the media machine, to use their words. But now, based on all this kind of insider testimony, he's using the same exact tactics. The same tactics he accused the royal family of in exploiting this power dynamic. What we're actually saying is not some disorganization. I think it's strategic, maybe even if it's unconscious. Here's the behavioral arc that emerges here. He couldn't get Sophie out directly. So he's applying all this sustained pressure to everything that's going on. There's private bullying, that all this tension in these board meetings and stuff, emotional coercion. When that fails, he pivots to this public sabotage campaign, according to her. We're just going off of what she's saying here. Is just activating PR to leak damaging stories, not informing staff, undermining her credibility with these sponsors, I think she calls it. I may be misremembering that. And framing this all as just resigning or distancing himself. His silence does the damage. And he's having his machine handle the narrative, and everybody else, like Sophie, these 400, 500 employees that they're talking about, are cleaning up the mess. This is the most important point of all. Let's not forget, this is the same playbook Harry has said the royal family used on him, leaking to the press, isolating all of the dissenters, letting other people take the fall, hiding the cruelty behind some polite PR statements, letting the machine handle all the dirty work. But now he's the one with the machine. So this isn't just one person getting bullied. It's an entire charity. There's a lot of people employed by this organization. And it's in Diana, Princess Diana's name, turned into this little emotional battle for no reason. And it's not just messy, it's a pattern of behavior. It's wrapped in these feelings of protection and loyalty and self-righteousness, but it's war. And I don't think Harry's evil. I just think he's unhealed, if that's a word. He was a total victim, and now he's got all this power, and he's using the same survival strategies that once hurt him. And I think this is maybe a hard truth for everybody. If you never process the trauma, you repeat it just from the other side of the table. When you ever heard hurt people, that's what that is all about. That's exactly what's happening now. This is like, I'm going to go full Bowden on everybody here. This is like Mr. Marcus Brutus. Brutus killed Julius Caesar to stop tyranny, to protect the Roman Republic. But after Caesar, Brutus starts creating massive amounts of chaos, justifying tons of violence for this greater good, ends up acting like the same exact ruler himself. He became what he tried to destroy. And I think that's what we're seeing, if these allegations are truthful. Scott, what do you got?
All right. I think I was wrong before, and I said that's the most anger we're going to see throughout all these videos is that last one, because here we're really seeing it. We're seeing flared nostrils. We're seeing a lot of teeth. We're seeing all kinds of things in here. So her voice tone, volume, it all changes up in here. She gets her voice tone gets a little bit stronger. It gets a little bit louder. Her volume does. Her diction gets really clean. She speaks very well. You know, her diction's really clean and clear, but now it's like crystal clear. There's no way you could not understand what she's saying. Her eyes narrow in on him when he starts with that interview, when he starts talking and asking questions. I think this is bad for Harry because she can prove I think she could probably prove all this stuff that she's talking about. There are some things from an emotional perspective, of course, she's not going to be able to, but all the other things, when she said she had all the receipts, I think she's probably got them. So I think this is, hopefully, I'm just saying what I think. I think she's going to come out on top on this. Mine's real short. That's all I got on that one. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about what I see. Yes, there is a whole lot of anger, and it's masked and very controlled. There's lots of ways to show anger. Some people scream and yell and get it out that way. Other people are very contained and get much more to the point, much more linear in their thought. So that might be her style. Don't know. One thing that people would there are two elements people may jump on in this entire video and say, but what about this? One is when she's asked, did he bully you? She doesn't say yes. She goes immediately into examples. That's a personality type and a style of delivering information. Rather than say yes and be redundant, I'm just going to tell you, no, here's what he did. You decide whether it's bullying or not. And I think that's what she does. She's articulate in describing how it treated her. And the other thing is she says me a lot. But I think the me, Mark, goes back to something you covered about her being upstaged when she should have been up in the publicity photos and being forced to become the mouthpiece of someone else. I think the me is about that because she says me, and these 500 other people. So those are the two elements people are going to seize on. I think she's indignant because she perceives this as betrayal, and that's the reason she brings up me more than once. There's fight or flight that comes up for the first time, real fight or flight. You can see respiration increase and the blink rate go up a little bit. And that's a rare thing for her as you watch. And then everything, all of her browbeating and everything she does is congruent in the message, which makes me believe this is truth as she perceives it. And then you can notice those narrowed eyes to the point you're making, Scott, about her being angry. I don't think she's angry with the guy who's interviewing as much as she is with the situation and what was done. And if this is provable, then it will be proven in court. Remember that these guys have a hell of a machine if it isn't provable. And they will drag it out into the public too. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, look, if she doesn't have the receipts, she certainly has the emotional receipts in this interview right now, though you're absolutely right. They are kind of hidden. There's this amazing moment at the start before she says at some point on Tuesday where her head kind of wobbles up. And I think that's her trying to suppress the surprise, the anger of that moment where Harry, the two founders and board members, she finds out that they've resigned. We'll come to how that transpires in a moment. But she's trying to control this extraordinary surprise and anger around that. She says it was an attack and it was damaging for me, on me. So, and she says me a little bit later. So she points into herself. There's some real power and emotion in that. She really does feel it to be a direct attack on her. She said, bullying, she says, and she shows her teeth in anger. That for me is an emotional receipt that, look, in the end, you may well then, telling it to an industrial tribunal or telling it to a judge, and the judge will decide. But I think in her mind, she has been bullied. She's not saying he bullied me. She's saying I've been bullied. And the emotional receipt is there around that. Real anger at and disgust at the injustice of that. But from one point of view, she's dealing with some incredible politics here. As far as I can understand it, the board go to remove her. Harry goes to remove her. She goes to court to get an injunction to stop the board being able to do that. The judge does not judge in her favor. The judge decides that there can't be an injunction on this. The two founders, including Harry and the board, resign anyway. And that's the surprise. That's the surprise. That essentially, I think now she's in a situation where she has quite a big charity, but she no longer has the two founders of that charity. And one of those founders who is able to get press coverage for anything and everything. And so, that leaves her in a big deficit of a situation, though she does say in this interview, look, the charity does good work. The charity has its own life. It has X amount of employees. It's its own thing. But ultimately, you imagine if you lose that publicity generating machine, and that machine that can bring in, polo players and the spectacle of that people will do major gift giving around that, major donations, that may well be lost. And so what a surprise for that to happen to her. And I think that's what we're seeing here, the anger at that surprise.
Yeah.
What you're essentially saying is that the Duke of Sussex is guilty of harassment and bullying and improper conduct in the governance of a charity.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I'm going to give you a really good example. The only reason I'm here, Trevor, is because at some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me, or my country directors, or my executive director. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? That is an example of harassment and bullying at scale. And so if the world didn't want to believe that there's such a thing as bullying, this unleashing of the Sussex machine on me and the 540 employees at Sentebale who received this and have had to defend it.
By the way, when you say the Sussex machine, what are you talking about?
The PR machine that supports Prince Harry's efforts. The only way we discovered of his decision was through the Sussex machine activating newspapers.
You were not told that he and the Princess planned to resign?
We were informed that they have the intention to withdraw if I went to the High Court and succeeded.
There have been accusations against you also.
Yes.
As I said, Baroness Chalker said that you were dictatorial. Mm-hmm. But on the polo match, which we've talked about, the accusation is that the financial backers were upset by your conduct, and also that you hired expensive consultants without board approval.
Well, that's just not true. Ian is witness.
Well, look, I mean, another source from who was a trustee apparently told a national newspaper that the trustees were supportive of moving fundraising towards America, but you didn't do that, you, Sophie. And I'm quoting here from the Financial Times. Trustees tried to negotiate this privately, requested she consider her position due to their lack of trust and confidence in her as a leader. Isn't the problem here that it was you was the problem, not the prince?
It was me who was the problem because I put a whistleblower complaint about the bullying, the harassment, and the misogyny, and Prince Harry interfered in the investigation of that. And the senior independent director who should have taken care of it was the very same person who then delivered the news to me that I was going to be removed by the board. So it's a cover-up, and the prince is involved.
You talked about misogyny. Let's be frank. Are you saying that the misogyny stemmed from Prince Harry himself and his associates?
I would actually say my experience is Prince Harry himself, fantastic actually. We had a great relationship. We had a great relationship. But there are some individuals on the board who, quite frankly, did not treat me in the way that they would have treated the prior chair, right? And
Sorry, because?
And completely disrupted my meetings because they thought that they could get away with mistreating a woman. And all the women who attended these meetings felt it.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I love this because we get a little bit from Ian Rawlinson, who's been, relatively quiet, had a sidekick, the wonderful Ian. We don't get very much from him, but essentially, an accusation is put at Shanduka, and she goes, "That's just not true." Ian as witness. Ian doesn't get to join in at all and go, "Yeah, actually, let me just verify that at all." It's just like Ian as witness. So Ian has been pulled out. Ian's an interesting guy. He actually does try and interrupt a few times during this one to get a word in. He tries to interrupt on the idea of misogyny. I don't know whether he was going to back that up or go that maybe that wasn't quite the case. I just don't know. But the interesting thing about Ian, and let me make a little bit of a prediction, is this is a trusted and top aide to Prince William. Here's my prediction, is William will come in and save the day on this one as a very lovely little maneuver and go, actually, this is a very decent charity doing very decent work, which it is, very decent charity doing very decent work. And look, my brother has, absconded for whatever reasons. We can't, he's going to do that kind of thing. But let me take over on this and make sure it carries on doing the good work that it should be doing. I think there's a lovely play to be had there, which I see coming. She talks about moving fundraising to America, which could have been a wise move. Who knows how much they were making in UK and Europe or anywhere else, and that maybe the major money was in America, and she would, and she wasn't doing that. Who knows? I just don't know. But we do get her checking and moving her hair to the side. Again, I don't know why that is. There could be a monitor facing her, and she's able to do, what maybe Chase you would call a hygienic check there. It could be some stress around this idea of she wasn't in favor of getting funding from America, getting gifts from America, but it's a little bit of a leap from baseline on that, and I wonder what it's about. And I'd like to see the full studio picture to be able to go, that's what she keeps clocking to the side there. But lovely little bit of stuff from Ian there, not getting a word in. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I think that just may be an adapter, Mark. That moving her hair may be an adapter because her respiration is up more than normal in this one. There's a short stroke nod when the guy is attacking her about the people from the Polo match saying it was her. So she's ready for that. But that's a really quick head nod of acceptance. She expects that, I think. I love when she waves her hand over in that regulator trying to get Ian involved, and she doesn't give him time to help her, but he doesn't rescue her either. And then she does the hair thing. I think it may just be an adapter. And there's all kinds of reasons that's going to happen. Because if you don't think she's stressed, watch her eyes get narrower and watch her right eye get more closed than the left one. There's something going on there. She's frustrated with where this is. That data intake eye, that happens on all of us. If you get really, really in a bind. And then you see a flash of anger in her face. I mean, we talk about micro expressions. Go back and watch that one. Slow it down. Sadie can slow it down. We do a close up and you'll see her face flash anger just for that split second as she talks about him being involved. But then she says in general, he was a decent person. That the misogyny that came out of that, she didn't point it to him. That might be self-preservation. That might be true. That might be some mix of both. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I completely agree. Her level of candor here and her confidence here is very hard to deny, even if you have some cognitive bias to favor Harry, even though he's not here to defend himself. In my view, just being a member of the behavior panel, taking this from a behavioral perspective, if you don't heal the system that hurt you, you're going to rebuild it with you on top. Maybe Sadie can make that a short. That's super short, though. But this is pure psyops. So let's break down how psyops works when the elites use it. There's actually a 5-step playbook being used here that you'll probably totally recognize from other elites who have been in trouble. Step 1, discredit the threat. Sophie files this whistleblower complaint about bullying and misogyny right after accusations fly against her. She's dictatorial, upset donors, spent money improperly. So the move here is discredit the messenger so nobody listens to the message. Step 2 is control the process. So the person who should have handled the investigation, they're the one who tells her she's being removed. That's internal containment, maybe collapse the process from inside to silence the threat a little bit. And step 3 is plausible deniability. She says Harry was fantastic to her personally, but all this happened under his watch. So that's gray zone influence. So keep your hands clean while other people do dirty work. You've seen this all over the place. I'm not just talking about this one video clip. Step 4 is break down perception. So she does the right thing. She files a complaint. She ends up being punished or isolated at least and kind of discredited. That creates a little psychological confusion, maybe a little gaslighting. Somebody says, well, maybe I'm the problem, or us, we think maybe she's the problem. So this is a collapse of perception where the target or the people looking at her doubt their own reality. Step 5, the final step, is weaponize the media. So she finds out Harry and Meghan are stepping back through the press, not a direct conversation. And that's basic information warfare. Use the media to control the entire narrative, apply pressure, and avoid accountability. So those are the 5 steps. Mark, what do you got?
Scott. Oh, it's me.
Scott, what do you got? Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's where everything ramps up a little bit. So the danger for Harry, as we're seeing that, which goes to my point I was making earlier, when she's worked up, she's staying really calm. Because when someone is fussing or they get upset and they start saying, here's the problem, it's so easily dismissed because of their behavior. She's going to be tough to get riled and to get rid of like that. And that's one of the tactics they'll use as well when you're from The Prince, anyway, that book I was telling you about, is they get somebody really mad and you can get them out of the way just because of the way they're acting. Because, we can't talk to him. Look at the way he acts when you do that. He can't handle it. Plus, it makes you look immature because you can't control your emotions. So I think she's going to be a formidable opponent to him, So I think that if he has really wronged her, I think he's going to have a real problem with this. I don't know what it's a real problem if he's going to go to, I don't know how big the problem would be, but I think he would look in the wrong. But this is what it looks like when you're keeping your cool, when you're really, really angry. I've got that, whatever the virus is going around, so that's why I keep coughing and muting over there. But since you guys brought up Sadie, and then you can talk about Sadie after this if you want to, Mark. There's a lot of comments that I always think I'm the one editing those extra things we do. And with all the stuff where it zooms in on people's faces and stuff like that, that's Sadie doing that. It's not me. She's the one that's doing all that awesome editing. That's her. It's not me. I don't know how to do that. So that's why these things look so clunky, is because she's doing those, the extra ones. What does she call them?
like close up.
Close-ups,
Yeah. So if you
She's
want
the
to
one
watch some of those, like go down, look at all our videos. They've usually got kind of a yellow and black kind of frame around them.
Yep.
They're usually about 30 minutes long, and Sadie does an incredible job of really, focusing in on the actions that we're talking about, which we just don't have the ability or the time to be able to do.
Say it.
Just Scott isn't that
Call it.
good as an editor.
Thank
Just
you.
isn't that. Isn't
Don't have it.
Not his.
Don't have
It's
it.
not his skill set. Not his skill set.
not easy.
So like go and watch loads of those. They don't get as many views as they deserve. Let's just
And there's another channel that we have.
yes.
And I always get emails from people saying, there's somebody stealing all your stuff and putting it on their channel. I'm like, no, that's our channel too.
No, it's us stealing all our stuff and putting it on our other channel. Because
And
we
the
got all
editing-
this stuff.
And the editing there is really good because Sadie's doing all that too.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't get the views that it should get. That's where all the quality is in all the stuff we don't do. That's
We're
where the
over
real
there.
quality is.
And I think a lot of people don't go because they're mad because they think it's somebody stealing from them.
Rip off, yeah.
And it's ours. It's called the Behavior Channel.
Well, and Sadie finds little nuanced things sometimes that we wouldn't even go and think. We're thinking, I'm not trying to be grandiose or anything when we say something. And Sadie will find a good illustration of that fact and bring it up. And it's beautiful. It's actually really, really nice.
Yeah.
It's art. It's art.
It is. Get over there, like it, subscribe to it, like and subscribe here, like and subscribe there.
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah.
There have been accusations against you also.
Yes.
As I said, Baroness Chalker said that you were dictatorial. But on the polo match, which we've talked about, the accusation is that the financial backers were upset by your conduct, and also that you hired expensive consultants without board approval.
Well, that's just not true. Ian is witness.
Well, look, I mean, another source from who was a trustee apparently told a national newspaper that the trustees were supportive of moving fundraising towards America, but you didn't do that, you, Sophie. And I'm quoting here from the Financial Times. Trustees tried to negotiate this privately, requested she consider her position due to their lack of trust and confidence in her as a leader. Isn't the problem here that it was you was the problem, not the prince?
It was me who was the problem because I put a whistleblower complaint about the bullying, the harassment, and the misogyny, and Prince Harry interfered in the investigation of that. And the senior independent director who should have taken care of it was the very same person who then delivered the news to me that I was going to be removed by the board. So it's a cover-up, and the prince is involved.
You talked about misogyny. Let's be frank. Are you saying that the misogyny stemmed from Prince Harry himself and his associates?
I would actually say my experience is Prince Harry himself, fantastic actually. We had a great relationship. We had a great relationship. But there are some individuals on the board who, quite frankly, did not treat me in the way that they would have treated the prior chair, right? And
Sorry, because?
And completely disrupted my meetings because they thought that they could get away with mistreating a woman. And all the women who attended these meetings felt it.
All right. We've watched all these videos and we've, I'm sure, obviously made up our decisions about what we think about things. Mark, tell us about what you think.
Yeah, I mean, look, she has a lot of credibility in the story that she tells. She tells it well. There's some real emotion, some real anger there. She's in control of all of that. Yeah, I think she is genuinely hurt by this. I think that comes across as well. All that being said, Sophie Chandauka, she's going to be around for a while. So and she's not leaving that chair of her own accord. And she's formidable and she likes it when you call out that she's been, called dictatorial by somebody who would be, a great dictator in her time. So she's a formidable player, I would say. So if they're out to oust her any further, she's not going anywhere. And I think quite possibly because everybody's resigned, they've gone away with their tails between their legs. On this one is a strong possibility at this point, which means that Harry, I don't know what your behavioral analysis on this, Chase, might be, but he doesn't fight for long. Let's just say that. He's not in it for the long game. Anyway, what are your thoughts, Chase?
Yeah, I'll just wrap with this. Unhealed wounds that make somebody a victim will always become corrosive when somebody gets into power. Almost every single time. If they're unhealed. Greg?
Yeah, she's certainly credible. When you watch it, everything she says, she illustrates with her whole body when she's saying it. So she believes everything she's saying. Let's also say you can be very competent at one thing and not another, and she could have bungled something that caused somebody to be angry to do whatever. Mark, to your point, you can resign as a power move, but you lose the power on the board once you do resign. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're not careful. So what we don't know is what happened. It's also probably pretty damn hard to manage the 800-pound gorilla that's Harry and Meghan being involved with your charity. It's suddenly your charity is less important than the people who are advocating for it. So I think it's a complex mess. I think she feels betrayed, and we can't see everything that's here. Let's assume she does have all the evidence. She's saying, looks like she might sit around for a while. I think you're right, Mark. She might be able to hold that seat. So we're telling you what we see, what we can understand, what we can perceive. And because there are no real hard questions about this thing happening or that thing happening, we can't tell you what Harry did or didn't do. Scott, what do you got?
All right, I think I think I'm saying the same thing over again. I think she showed a great deal of restraint here, especially on being under this kind of pressure. She's on TV. She's mad. She's frustrated. She's got a bunch of people saying stuff about her that probably isn't true, and she's still staying in control. My only suggestion for her would be just to get some hot chicken in Ian so he can pipe up a little bit when the time comes. Because, boy, he sure could have come in there but it may, again, Mark, be a political play where he's sending in Billy to take over, make him look good. So you never know. All right, fellas, thanks for another good one, and we'll see you next time.